What's up, theorists? Your girl QB clocking in for the culture. Today we're breaking down Janet Jackson's catalog, separating the rest from the best. The 10th and youngest child of the Jackson family, Janet's superstar trajectory was not the cakewalk you might think. Today we're going through the legend's unforgettable discography and letting you know where we rank her greatest works and the not so great ones. But before we get into all that, if you're feeling the channel, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and treat the super thanks the way you want it to treat you. It's always the season of giving at Culturalist Theory. Let's get to it. Number 11, Janet Jackson. While still managing to show a few glimpses of her superstar potential, the 16-year-old's self-titled debut album would only go as far as its teenage pop appeal would carry it. Renee Moir and Angela Winbush don't do Janet any favors by steering her sound in the direction of her older brother Michael from a decade prior. At just 8 songs and 37 minutes runtime, the album had the ingredients necessary for a solid debut. Songs like Young Love and Come Give Your Love to Me are still enjoyable listens, but the lack of identity on her album, especially knowing how her story unfolds, makes it feel incomplete. Since the majority of the sales occurred before SoundScan tracking, Janet's peak at 63 on the charts isn't the whole story, but it's enough for now. The album would go on to sell roughly 300,000 copies worldwide, underwhelming by any metric. With the exception of some behind-the-scenes assistance from Joe, none of the Jacksons had any involvement with the album, highlighting Janet's determination to make a name for herself. Number 10, Dream Street. Now, this sophomore album certainly sees some growth in sound and subject material. The bad news is that it was still not the runaway success Papa Joe thought it would be. The album peaked at 147 on the Billboard 200. This would be Janet's only album not to chart any Hot 100 hits. Don't Stand Another Chance, If It Takes All Night, and Pretty Boy do elevate Dream Street over its predecessor. Enjoying moderate success on the R&B chart, Don't Stand Another Chance welcomed brother Marlon behind the board and some ad-libs from Michael. 4 decades into her illustrious career, Janet has cemented her reputation as one of music's most visionary artists. That journey started with this album. Filming her first music video while the show Fame was being shot, Dream Street opened the world's eyes to Janet's dual threat ability to stun with visuals and vocals. While developing her presence on the mic, Jackson would finally start to set herself apart, leading to her iconic breakthrough. More on that later. Number 9, Discipline. Ironically, Jackson's 10th studio album sees her unrestrained in a manner we haven't seen her since Wouldn't You Mind. Following the exit of longtime producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Janet employs a more futuristic electronic pop sound, and this 2008 release would have to do it for the next 7 years, as Jackson stepped away from recording for her longest stretch yet. Janet masterfully guides listeners, threading the line between deliberate sex appeal and contemporary pop sound. Miss Jackson gets into the driver's seat one more time on the title track, while songs like Love and Roller Coaster show she can still dip into her delicate pop bag. Janet's collab with artists like Missy and Neo reflect 2000s creativity like baggy jeans and tall tees. They just couldn't miss. However, the album is interlude heavy, struggles with consistency, and Rock With You is an unnecessary instance of Janet comparing herself to Michael, despite 20+ years of building her own legacy. Discipline fails to stand with some of her best material due to its loss of momentum. 10 albums in and we could see some chinks in the armor. Even though we didn't know it at the time, this would lay the groundwork for an even greater snapback. Number 8, 20YO. Commemorating the 20-year anniversary of Control, YO is a celebration of longevity and dominance. 9 albums in, her experience and ear for music made this victory lap even sweeter. Gems like With You, Call On Me, which peaked at 25 on the charts, and Roll With You reminded audiences around the world why Janet stood at the peak of the mountaintop for more than 3 decades. Little would edge her out for the #1 debut though with Release Therapy, while 20YO's 296,000 first week sales would be her lowest since the Velvet Rope. Geez, the expectations of an icon. Take Care is underrated and probably deserves a spot on her Sensual Bops playlist because Janet really channeled that love scene energy right here. The more contemporary R&B pop phase aimed to transition her sound and appeal to a newer, read younger audience. As part of the rollout for the album, Janet's Design Me cover contest helped build buzz around the project by allowing fans to submit their own designs for the cover. The record would secure Janet a Grammy nomination for Best Contemporary R&B Album in 2007, her most recent nomination to date. Honestly, we gave YO the slight edge over Discipline because of the chemistry between her and the Jimmy Jam Terry Lewis team. We think there's another video in there somewhere. What about you? Number 7, Damita Joe. Spanning 18 months from start to finish, the longest for any of her projects to that point, Janet's time away was noticeable. With stronger hip-hop influenced production and a pronounced focus on pop crossover, the album is dance-heavy for sure. Joints like Warm, I Want You, and Like You Don't Love Me symbolize the various personalities she would convey throughout the album. The project would be deemed commercially disappointing. One thing worth noting though, the media was not blameless in her reportedly failed rollout turn apology tour. Following the '93 Janet album, Jackson had reshaped what it meant for women to embrace their sexuality, much to the dismay of critics across the country. With Janet catching all the flack from the botched performance, outlets jumped on the chance to label her track record for self-expression as a catalyst for her wardrobe malfunction. We won't say they had it out for her, but there was a blatant imbalance of the coverage and culpability. So there's that. Now back to the track. All For You would see Janet reaching a different commercial stratosphere, which makes this sharp and dramatic decline in numbers all the more alarming. Damita Joe would be her first record since Dream Street not to top the charts, this time losing out to Confessions. However, she picks up the momentum toward the end of the album, catching her stride on R&B junking and never looking back. Now, if the start of the album matched the latter portion, we surely would have ranked this one a spot or two higher. Ultimately, her 8th LP would account for 2 of her 21 Grammy nominations, but not see her walk away with any gold. It still sold 3 million copies worldwide though. Number 6, Unbreakable. Narrowly failing to crack our prestigious top 5, Unbreakable was crafted with energy and tension we haven't heard since All For You. Janet delivered one of her most consistent and concise projects following a 7-year gap in her musical resume. Notice we said music. While Miss Jackson was away from the mic, she was busy in front of the camera, starring in Why Did I Get Married To and For Colored Girls. Both were stellar performances if you ask us. On May 26, 2015, Janet's 49th birthday, the superstar would announce a new album and world tour. Reuniting with Jimmy and Terry nearly 10 years after their last collaboration, she would waste no time taking her audience down her road of healing, self-discovery, and growth. The record would touch on everything from Janet's childhood to the grief she felt after her brother's untimely passing, giving the most in-depth view of the woman behind the music we've ever heard. Debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200, Janet's re-emergence was met with both critical and commercial success. Released through her own record label and sporting a modest 2 features, Jackson's return to the spotlight was so significant because it was on her own terms. Her 40th entry on the Hot 100, No Sleep featuring J. Cole, After You Fall, and the title track all emphasized that great music is never unfashionable. With her 7th number 1 album, Janet became one of only 3 acts to top the charts in each of the last 4 decades. If that's not consistency, we don't know what is. Number 5, All For You. All For You, released amidst her separation from second husband Renee Elizondo Jr., shows Janet at one of the most intimate and vulnerable points of her career. Despite the instability in both her personal and professional life, Janet still exudes seduction and sex appeal in ways we hadn't heard from her since her Mononym project nearly a decade earlier. The album can certainly feel long-winded with 20 tracks and a runtime north of 70 minutes. But whether on an open letter to her ex like Truth, The Sunshine-Filled Better Days, or the number 1 smash title track, Janet keeps her audience engaged every second of this early 2000s classic. Yes, we use the C word. The record's 605,000 first-week sales would mark a career high, earning a Grammy Award for Best Dance Recording and grabbing another 2 nominations. All For You is essentially the last record we got from superstar Janet. The album's explicit nature and content would cause it to be banned in several countries upon its release, as initial pressings lacked parental advisory labels. Somebody's child was out there listening to Would You Mind and probably got a whooping of a lifetime. It's still one of her catalog's most underrated staples. Just don't play it at the wrong time or place. If you know, you know. Number 4, Velvet Rope. Janet's 4th consecutive chart topper takes the number 4 spot on our list. Expertly dealing with everything from depression to domestic abuse to sexual liberation and self-acceptance, Velvet Rope is our pick for Miss Jackson's most versatile record to date. Due to darker subject matter and a grittier sound, the album is often labeled as her most mature. The record comes at an artistic crossroads, giving OG fans a new lens to appreciate her through. Velvet Rope would also garner a whole new audience through her innovative contribution to what would soon be called alternative R&B. You know, we always gotta label something something. Fun fact, Jackson was on a freshly negotiated deal with Virgin worth a record-breaking $80 million at the time, which translates to about $150 million circa 2023. Seeing that this rope reeled in more than 3 million units sold, we'd say the label got a pretty good return on investment. Got Till It's Gone, I Get Lonely, Rope Burn, Anything, only in a stacked catalog like Janet's would Velvet Rope not sit in the top 3. Through its demonstration of emotional depth and maturity, this album has proven itself to be Janet's most dense. Got Till It's Gone would win the Grammy for Best Short-Form Music Video. We don't know how she missed the nomination for Best R&B Album, but we digress. Number 3, Control. Janet's critical and commercial breakthrough 3rd album seemingly came out of nowhere, and not a moment too soon. With her management changing hands from Papa Joe to A&M exec John McClain, the annulment of her short-lived marriage to James DeBarge, and the introduction of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Janet quite literally had to establish that she was in control. And that she did, going from underwhelming freshman and sophomore efforts to international superstardom. More than being the forerunner of the new jack swing sound of the 80s, Control has been remembered as one of the most quintessential albums the genre has produced, boasting 5 top 5 hits and the first female artist to do so from one album. You heard us right. Her coming out party of her project had 5 songs that peaked within the top 5 on the Hot 100. Unbelievable even by today's standards. While the track list reads like a greatest hits, starting with the lead single, What Have You Done For Me Lately, then Nasty, where Janet goes from baby to Miss Jackson in a bar. Her first number 1 hit, When I Think of You, title track Control, and Let's Wait a While. And we can't forget about the iconic videos to match, specifically the Pleasure Principle among them. the only song not written or produced by Jam and Lewis, but by fellow The Time alum Moir. The original pressing is only 9 tracks long, and 7 were released as singles. Spending more than 2 years on the Billboard 200, Control received a Grammy nod for the Album of the Year and won Jam and Lewis the 1987 Gramophone for Producer of the Year non-classical. Well deserved if you ask us. It's 5 times platinum in the US and reached diamond status worldwide. After all that action, can you believe they didn't even do a full tour to promote the album and instead settled for a 3-week, 13-city walkabout? Number 2, Janet. Following a bidding war, Janet became the highest paid musical act at that time, signing her first contract with Virgin worth an estimated 40 M's of Richard Branson's money. The return on investment had to be crazy. After facing criticism challenging Miss Jackson's success as being the result of her family tree and subsequently her collaboration with Jam and Lewis, and emboldened Janet and empowered by her own self-determination, leveled up. Her artistic evolution and sonic progression make themselves apparent from the jump, with her taking the lead on writing all the lyrics and joining Jimmy and Terry on the boards and arrangements. Miss Jackson's 4-year break between albums is made worthwhile with tracks like The Body That Loves You, New Agenda, and Funky Big Band. Where Rhythm Nation focused on a more abrasive and edgy sound, Janet comes in with the smooth and melodic. Here we also see her take her social activism a step further and cement her status as a singular talent and innovator. Posting her 3rd straight chart-topping album and the first to debut at the tip top, Janet was home to a giant track list with 28 entries with 6 top 10 hits on the Hot 100. Janet is 6 times platinum, and That's the Way Love Goes would grab the Grammy for Best R&B Song, but lose out on the Best Female R&B Vocal Performance. Again, iconic imagery is another piece of this historic project, from the music videos to the cover art featuring a bare-chested Janet covered by her then-husband's hand. An outfit a little harder to pull off than the one at the number 1 spot. Number 1, Rhythm Nation. After experiencing groundbreaking success with her previous release, Janet and her team earned enough creative control to push back against the labels, rather than folding to executive pressure and churning out someone else's vision. Through her socially conscious material and visionary sound, Janet was already one of the biggest names in the industry at just 23 years old. While still battling to step outside of her brother's long shadow, she had no problems putting up consistently impressive performances. With such a stacked catalog, there are a few options that could hold this top spot, but we feel that the staying power of the album alone put it in the upper echelon of her body of music. Jackson would become the first woman nominated for Producer of the Year, along with a plethora of other achievements and accolades. Accounting for 1/3 of her total Grammy nominations, we think the numbers speak for themselves. Her unprecedented blend of sounds reimagined what was possible when artists blurred the lines between genre and artistry. Rhythm Nation was promoted with an accompanying 30-minute film that aired on MTV, winning Jackson the Grammy for Best Long-Form Music Video. She would also get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, along with both handwritten lyrics to Rhythm Nation and her militaristic uniform for the video being preserved in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Don't forget to mention it's also been selected by Library of Congress for its 2020 National Registry class. Truly a living legend. So the black cat's out of the bag. We really enjoy giving Miss Jackson her flowers on this one. So let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you know what to do. And if you're not subscribed, it's time to change that. I'm QB, signing off for CT. Peace.